subscribe now and press the bell icon. Never miss an update.
Welcome to Health Live at Seniors Today. We have here with us Dr. Leena Ganguly, who is going to be talking about positive aging and geriatric care. A little about Dr. Ganguly. She is a leading geriatric palliative care physician. She is a senior medical officer at the Sukoon Nilaya Palliative Care Center, which is at the King George V Memorial, Mumbai. Some of you who have been to our sessions in the past would have met with Dr. Eric Borges. He once came in to talk about the center, and the other, when on Palliative Care Day, he was again there with us. So she is a senior medical officer there. Dr. Ganguly has completed her MBBS from the University of Mumbai and then acquired a master's degree in public health at the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, followed by a master's in public health from the Harvard School of Public Health in the US. She also pursued a master's degree in human rights law, in which she ranked first at the University of Mumbai, Department of Human Rights. And her dissertation was interestingly titled Establishing Palliative Care as a Human Right in India. She has been working with community-based organizations and NGOs like CEHAT in the field of health and human rights, particularly the rights of women, children, and the elderly. She's an author and editor of the book A Review of Healthcare in India and other publications related to health and human rights in India. She has served as a member of the Ethics Committee of the Tata Memorial Hospital and currently serves as a member and chairperson of the Ethics Committee of the KEM Hospital. KEM Hospital, as we know, is one of Mumbai's biggest public hospitals. And she's associated with Silver Innings, an NGO that works with patients and families affected by dementia and Alzheimer's. She's a member of the National Task Force for Palliative Care, appointed by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Government of India, and the Maharashtra State Technical Advisory Committee for Palliative and Geriatric Care. Delighted to have you here with us, Dr. Ganguly. I was speaking with her before this session started, and you have an amazing mix of, I shouldn't be saying degrees, but amazing mix of education in the field of public health and palliative care. We are so fortunate to have you with us, and we're going to talk to you more about all of this.
Thank you.
One of the first questions which I ask everybody who's coming here, and we started our sessions on Health Live at Seniors Today when the lockdown happened. But is it all history now? Is it all goodbye to masks and all the inhibitions that we had? What is your advice as a medical practitioner to various people who will be coming to you with concerns?
So let me put it this way. I think there should be no more fear, okay? But I think there should still be caution. And I think especially given that I work mainly with the geriatric population, I would advise caution anyway, pandemic or no pandemic. Because what happens is it's not just COVID that we would have been worried about with the elderly. We would be worried about any communicable diseases like community-acquired pneumonias, influenza, herpes zoster, other viral infections. And so I think caution is always a good thing. About masking, I would still exercise caution and ask people to wear masks, especially in situations or gatherings, social gatherings where there may be a lot of people coming together. I think masking would be a good idea. Immunization, I definitely think it's a good idea to follow whatever the protocols are in place. For example, today I was just reading the updates on the American Geriatric Society position statement on immunization, including the immunization for COVID. And I think this is true of any immunization, that immunization protects us from the complications, the dangerous complications that would arise out of the infection. So a lot of people think that if you're immunized, you may not get the infection. The thing is, you can still get the infection, but immunization protects you from the complications that would arise out of that infection. So I would say that yes, the third dose is now being made available. So I think people should take that immunization. And so that's masking, immunization, hand washing, hand sanitation, sanitization, hand hygiene was always a good idea, right? I mean, even before Corona, we've always washed our hands when we've come in from outside. And avoiding crowded gatherings. As I said, maybe I would still give this another 6 to 8 months for us to feel really safe regarding large gatherings, non-essential travel. And as I said, this is especially for the elderly, those who are more frail, those who are more prone to infections. I would say that it's a good idea to still exercise precautions. Can we allow staff to enter the home now? Like I know a lot of elderly people found it very difficult when it wasn't possible to have your housekeeping staff coming in. I think that can be allowed now safely because hopefully your staff would be immunized as well. But it would still be a good idea maybe to have at least comfortable cotton masks in the house when people are coming in from outside. And apart from that, I think that would give us a degree of safety.
And this news about the XC variant that was there, one case of XC, is that something that one should be exceedingly worried about?
So as I said, I've always said to everyone that I don't like worry and fear, but I do like caution. So yes, I feel that when there is news about possible new variants, I think we should all be much more cautious. If it means masking, if it means avoiding gatherings again, I would support that. And especially, as I said, for the elderly population who are, even without COVID, who are at risk for infections because of their weaker immunity.
Right. So Doctor, the topic that we have for you today is on positive aging and geriatric care, and we've had sessions on various specialties over the last 2 years, and while we've had a few doctors like Dr. Borges, there was Roop Gursahani, Rajam Iyer, who have all spoken about this, but what you are coming with is an interesting, interesting mix of education and qualification. So we are going to dip into that. Those of you who have questions for Dr. Ganguly should put them in the Q&A tab, and we have a few questions that have come in by email, and we're going to ask them to you. So please put in your age, gender. If you do not want your name to be revealed, you can mention that in the question, or you can just pose it as an anonymous attendee, and we will not reveal your name, because I do understand there could be questions, especially when one is talking about positivity and geriatric care, because which comes where there are a fair number of mental health issues also that impact the elderly. So if you have any questions that are there, even regarding mental health, please put them here, and we will have Dr. Ganguly addressing them. So over to you for your opening remarks, and then we have questions coming in from people. We have a large number of people who have gathered here, and there are even more who will be watching it on our live feeds, and of course a recording of this, which will be there live next week. Over to you, Dr. Ganguly.
Okay, thank you so much. So first of all, thank you very much, Mr. Maheshwari. Thank you, Seniors Live, and thank you to all of you who are attending and watching. I'm going to go very quickly through my introductory remarks because I would like to answer questions. But so let me just speak about positive aging. So when I speak about positive aging, what I mean is a holistic approach to aging, because communities around the world are, with better access to healthcare, better nutrition, advances in medicine, we are living longer, and we have what we call graying societies. Okay, so we have societies where we have more and more elderly people, and I think it's a positive thing that if we have a holistic approach to aging, we can all have we can optimize our health and have healthier and happier lives as we age. So to do that, for a holistic approach, what I like to give everyone as my first take-home point is what we call the PIECES model, or the acronym PIECES, PIECES, okay? So when you think of solving a jigsaw puzzle, for example, we know that a jigsaw puzzle can only be completed when all the pieces are brought together. So similarly, for us to have a holistic approach to healthy aging, we need to bring all the pieces together. And I'm going to tell you what the PIECES of PIECES stands for. So there are basically 6 domains that we need to focus on. P is the physical domain, I is intellectual, E is emotional, C is capabilities, E is the environment, and S is social and spiritual networks. Okay, so let's start with the P, the physical domain. So what can we do to, in the physical domain, to enhance and optimize our age? Because we have to understand that aging comes with certain natural physiological changes, which are to some extent modifiable with exercise, diet, and lifestyle modifications, but are also part of the natural process of aging. So just to give you quick examples, for example, in the cardiovascular system, the elasticity of the vessel walls begins to diminish with age, and therefore the vessel walls become harder, and this is how one develops hypertension that's age-related. Or, for example, the receptors in our body that are sensitive to blood pressure changes, those receptors become less sensitive with age, and so therefore with age, you have the risk of what we call postural hypotension, or your blood pressure changes with the change in your posture. So for example, if you're lying down and you get up suddenly, you stand up suddenly from a lying down position, your blood pressure tends to drop. And in a younger person, that adjustment would happen very quickly, but in an older person, because the receptors are less sensitive and responsive, that change takes a bit of time for adjustment, and therefore the elderly are at risk for postural hypotension and falls. So that's cardiovascular system. We have to watch for the blood pressure. We have to watch for blood pressure changes with sudden changes in posture. In the gastrointestinal system, there are natural changes. For example, the motility of the intestines is a little less, and so maybe appetite tends to get poorer with age, digestion tends to slow down with age, and there are issues like constipation with age. In the central nervous system, the changes are that the visual acuity, so some of the nerve cells associated with vision and hearing begin to diminish in their function. In the respiratory system, the elastin in the lungs and the breathing capacity of the intercostal muscles sometimes begins to reduce. So the work of breathing becomes more for people as they advance in age. In the endocrine system, the sensitivity of insulin and glucose control begins to diminish a bit. And so people can have age-related diabetes setting in. So in the physical domain, these are all age-related changes. But what's good to know is that we can address these changes with lifestyle modifications, and with these changes, we can still work at optimizing our health for years to come. So what we need to focus on in the physical domain is we need to be sure that we're getting regular eye and ear checkups so that our vision is as good as possible and that we're preventing the risk of accidents and falls. We need to ensure that dentition is being checked. So we want to make sure we're getting our dental checkups at least on an annual basis. Nutrition is very important. That's something in our hands. We want to make sure that we have healthy diets with a good mix of protein, fruits and vegetables. Try to reduce the processed sugars in our diet. The Asian population is found to have higher risk factors for diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. And so we are more prone to diabetes. So we need to make sure that we have good sugar control in our diets. Exercise has to be more than just a hobby. Exercise has to be almost prescribed exercise. So we need 30 minutes of some form of exercise during the day. Walking is excellent. What we call strength and resistance exercises. So in the safety of your home, if you could have either resistance bands, which could be pulled to build resistance, lifting weights. Now this has to be done under the supervision of a professional, at least initially. So just to mention that at Sukoon Nilaya, we actually have a geriatric OPD. And so we would love to, reach out to as many of you as possible. So I was talking about the physical aspect, so the importance of diet, exercise, good sleep hygiene, all right? It's really important these days. Sleep cycles are being disrupted. People are staying up late, watching television or watching things. So remember, the blue light that's emitted from televisions, iPads, phones, blue light is actually very stimulating for the brain. So it's very difficult for you to fall asleep if you've been watching television and watching media. So what I do ask people to do is reduce your screen time and increase your green time if possible. So reduce the amount of media that you're watching and see if that can be substituted with green time. So that would be time outside, even if it's on your balcony, on your terrace, if your building has a garden, in your garden, all right? But if you are watching some form of media, try to stop that by about 9 or 10 at night so that it gives your brain time to slow down and get a good night's sleep. So sleep is important. Stress management, of course, which we would come to in the other points. And reducing the risk of falls, because one thing that's very common in the elderly is the risk of falls and fractures. And then because of the risk of osteoporosis or weakening of our bones as we age, fractures are actually more common in the elderly, and they are harder for healing, more difficult for healing. So that's the P of pieces. So the physical aspects are what we need to look at. Then intellect, that's I, intellectual aspects. Many of us, after retirement, try to find other things to do, like either working part-time somewhere or volunteering with the community to give back. Or if you live in a joint family setup, maybe you help your grandchildren with their homework. But you need to stay intellectually engaged. If that means reaching out to your old school friends, alumni or something, but you do need to engage yourself in a way that intellectual capacity also stays intact. A great way to exercise your brain is through language. So if you can learn another language, or be sure that you read maybe the newspapers of 2 or 3 different languages to just stay in touch. Language is hugely protective for the brain. Be sure to speak to people in different languages if possible, right? Connect with people. So that's the I. So P-I. E is emotional domain. After a certain age, we do have late onset depression, or geriatric depression can set in, both because of depletion of the chemicals in our brain and also because of some life circumstances, the loss of loved ones, loss of school friends, etc. So emotional health is something we need to focus on. We need to be sure for ourselves and for the elderly that we love to look for signs of depression, loss of interest in things that once interested a person, loss of appetite. Also, we need to look out for anxiety in these people, because these are things that can be addressed by medical professionals and can be treated. So we want to look out for these emotional needs as well. All right, so that's P-I-E. Then I come to C, which is capabilities. Capabilities, so all of us have our capabilities and our gifts. We need to optimize as far as possible on what we can do, and we need to find ways to compensate for what we cannot do. So for example, if we live in a building that has staircases and doesn't have a lift, okay, and we develop osteoarthritis or some kind of pain, maybe it'll be difficult for us to go up and down the stairs very often, but we need to find ways that we can optimize what we can do so that we don't lose connectivity, for example. So if it means maybe limiting going up and down to just once a day, but then the rest of the time trying to use other ways to connect with people, we need to focus on our capabilities and ensure that we are maximizing what we can do and compensating for what we cannot do. Another thing is taking up new capabilities. So maybe when we were working people, we didn't have time to cook, for example. But now that we're free, we might want to try different cuisines. We might want to learn how to cook, learn how to bake, take up new activities that might interest us now, which we didn't have time to do before. So see if there's other things you can do to enhance those capabilities. Enhance linguistic capabilities. So try writing a diary, writing a journal, try practicing different languages. These days, there's so many online language courses available, so see if that's something that interests you, okay? So that's the C of pieces. E is environment. Part of healthy aging is making sure that the environment that we live in is safe. So the first safe environment starts at home. The first thing we want to do at home is reduce the risk of falls. So I always suggest that bathrooms be fitted with grab rails or grab hand rails in the bathrooms. So you have supportive grab rails at the sides of the toilet seat, so that when a person is getting up or sitting down, they have support. Grab rails in the bathing area. If you can get non-slip, you can buy these mats that prevent slipping. They can be placed on the bathroom floors, for example, so that people don't slip. If you have a tiled floor, you want to make sure that you're avoiding any, dripping or wet patches that someone could slip on. If there are carpets in the home, you want to make sure that all the carpet margins are securely fastened to the floor, because I've had many patients who have tripped on a carpet. Okay, you want to check for in the safety of the bedrooms. You want to check that lighting is adequate. You want to check that your bedspreads don't have tassels, like sometimes bed sheets as a decorative thing, they take the ends and they tie those decorative knots and tassels. I've had many elderly whose great toe gets caught in the tassel and causes a fall. So you want to check your environment for safety, okay? You want to make sure you have adequate lighting everywhere, all risks of falls. For example, chairs. You want to make sure your chairs aren't necessarily on wheels. Like a lot of computer chairs have wheels, and sometimes when you're sitting, the chair can move back and a person can fall. So you want to make sure that these chairs, if they have wheels, the wheels have some sort of locking mechanism so that the chair doesn't move. So these little things you would want to check your house for safety, all right? The environment has to be safe. You may also want to identify one safe person in your community or in your building who would have a key to your house, so that in case of an emergency, somebody else can let themselves into the house and come and help you in case of an emergency. So these things are what you would think of for E. And last is S. S is social and spiritual networks. Social networks, very, very important. I always feel that even before COVID, and then COVID, of course, exacerbated this because of lockdown and isolation, but I think loneliness is becoming the newest epidemic, and loneliness is particularly prevalent in the elderly and the chronically ill, because they're not able to get out of the house that much, and social contacts begin to sort of wither away. I think we need to really actively, if there's one message I can ask you to take home today, it is, let's each one of us do something to combat loneliness in the community. I'm sure there's someone you know of who's maybe recently lost a loved one or who is alone at home. And if we can just each of us reach out to someone who we think might be alone, I think it'll really help, because in the elderly, loneliness is becoming a big issue. It's a social epidemic, and it's also a risk factor, because if you think of people who are alone, they are higher at risk for malnutrition, they're higher at risk for depression, they're higher at risk for maybe a fall at home, maybe an accident at home, and no one might even know they've had that fall because no one has connected with them for days. So I think we need to address loneliness. And for ourselves, it helps to establish maybe old friends who we might have fallen out of touch with, school alumni, college friends. See if you can connect with someone and make sure that every day at least you're talking to at least 2 or 3 different people and keep those social connections alive because those are very important for healthy aging. And the other S is, of course, spiritual connections. So, whatever your spiritual practice may be, maybe it's reading some scriptures, or maybe it's some form of meditation or group prayer, whatever it may be, that's also found to be very healthy. So, these are the 6 domains for a healthy and positive aging. So, that's where you bring all the pieces together, and that's physical, intellectual, emotional capabilities, environment, and social and spiritual networks. I think that would be our steps toward healthy aging.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Ganguly, for this session. And the PIECES acronym is interesting, and I'm sure people would perhaps want to watch your video again to kind of understand this better, and also practice this in their own way. So we have got a few questions which have come in right now, as well as some that have come in the past. So the question which is there from Deepak Shroff is something that you've spoken about in your session, but it's a very basic thing as on how to remain positive, how to have a positive mind. And and I know there was another question that is coming on the email, which also spoke about that it's easier said to have a positive mind, but there are so many factors that are at play. One is the health issues that happen. The other is the fact that you're not earning and you are perhaps a load on the family. So it's easier said to have a positive mind, but there are so many negativities that exist in the world, and COVID was the last straw. So your response to that?
Okay, so I completely hear I completely hear that emotion in the person who has said that it's easier said, and I agree that it is easier said. And in no way am I suggesting that someone should either force themselves or stay falsely positive and especially in the context of COVID. COVID was a difficult time to stay positive. There has been financial loss. The people have lost loved ones. It's been a time of loss, and it's really been a difficult time. Having said that, what I could suggest is that sometimes if we are feeling negative or overwhelmed, sometimes it may help to reach out to someone else and talk to someone about it. That's the maybe someone if you maybe sometimes just being heard and the process of catharsis, or just getting those painful negative thoughts out of your head to someone else, may help. I agree that it's sometimes very difficult following, after a certain age when you're no longer financially contributing to the family and you feel like a burden to the family. Maybe that's a difficult time and space to be in. So again, if it would help to talk to someone, maybe someone could help you work through those emotions. Because I'm in no way saying that being positive is just a matter of willpower. I often say to people when they say that depression, for example, geriatric depression is a very serious concern for us, and they say that it's just a question of having a positive mindset. I say no, it's not, because it's like telling someone who has anemia that you don't need to take iron supplements, you don't need to build your hemoglobin, you just need to use your positive willpower and you can increase your hemoglobin. No, we don't do that with anemia. So similarly, we would not do that with depression or with negative feelings. We would never say, well, the onus is on you to make yourself feel better. We would say that you try to reach out to someone. And here I'm just adding this because I have to, that Cipla Foundation has started a helpline called Sat, and Sukoon Nilaya also has a free geriatric OPD for which we take tele-OPD calls, we see people in person, and we are there to help the elderly navigate through these spaces. I'll share the contact information of both numbers with Mr. Maheshwari, so that can be put up in the summary of this talk, if that's possible.
Thank you. We have a longish statement from Mr. Shrikant Kulkarni. He says the Japanese people are known to have the longest average lifespan. According to a report I read sometime back, they attribute it mainly to the quality of water they drink, since water forms about 70% of the body. I understand it's called Kangen water. It is more alkaline than the water we all drink. The machine not only gives germ-free water, but also produces alkaline water by ionization, the report said. Do you agree? If yes, shouldn't we all adopt that technology?
So I think, let me put it this way. Ethically, I'll only be able to opine on things if I have any expertise or background in them. And this is something that's very new to me. The Japanese longevity has been attributed to a number of things. This may be one of them. Another thing is also their the entire approach to life, their sense of purpose, their diet, exercise, and there may be genetic factors too. So, remember, in medicine and in health, we always have what we call modifiable and non-modifiable risk factors. Non-modifiable risk factors are basically our race and our genetics. Modifiable risk factors are things like exercise, diet, lifestyle, etc. What I would suggest is, Mr. Kulkarni, if you could, I would just need to read up more on this alkaline water thing. But in general, a good, healthy diet that's got a good, a balance of proteins, it has less processed sugars, fresh fruits, vegetables, fiber, all of your minerals, a good balanced diet, 30 minutes of exercise per day, and good control of diabetes, hypertension, and these risk factors. I think that's a good target for us to work with. I would be very happy if someone could flip across to me any literature about this Japanese practice, and then I'd only be able to opine on it if I knew more about it.
So Mr. Kulkarni says that he will send us a write-up about the Kangen water. So Dr. Kulkarni, so Mr. Kulkarni, you could send it to us at Seniors Today, the Seniors Today ID, which is editor, editor at seniorstoday.in, and I will have it forwarded to Dr. Ganguly. Doctor, there's a question that has come in by mail, which says, how much ahead of senior citizenhood should one start planning for that?
So it depends on what you mean by planning. If we're talking about healthy practices like diet and exercise, I would say from today. Like, I would say that even a 40-year-old even a 40-year-old, if they have a good diet, exercise, and lifestyle regime in place, they are investing in their health, when they turn 60 or 70, because diabetes, uncontrolled hypertension are now being linked to onset of dementia and neurocognitive decline later on in life. So I would really say the sooner the better in terms of health. In terms of financial planning, I would really suggest that that's something you discuss with your financial planners, because again, that's not something I have much competence in. But as far as aging goes, I would say start planning now. Like, if it means, again, going by the pieces checklist, I would say right now, have your diet, exercise, lifestyle modifications in place, have your intellectual activities in place, have your social connections in place, make sure that your environment is safe and that you're not exposing yourself to risk factors. So the sooner you start planning, the better.
Right. Doctor, we have a question that has come in, which is, Doctor, what is your opinion about assisted living homes? Is that something that helps in mentally, and is the environment like that of old age homes that were there, or is it a better place to be in?
So the choice between being at home and then being in an assisted living home is really a personal choice. I would suggest that if anyone is considering moving to a home, one would probably want to, visit the place first, get a better idea. Personally, and this is entirely my personal opinion, I do believe and support the idea of what I call aging in place, which means aging in your own home as far as possible. If it means hiring extra help to help with things like cooking and housekeeping, and if your budget allows that, then I personally feel that aging in place is preferable. But then everyone has their own realities, their own their own preferences, and if assisted living facilities seem to offer good coverage, good medical coverage, maybe nursing aides, they may have they may be equipped with gyms that are elder friendly or walkways, gardens, something like that. And if your budget allows something like that, some people do feel that that kind of community also brings together a lot of elders, and therefore there's that social connectedness. But one thing that has been noted abroad as well is that then you miss out on the intergenerational experience that you would have had in a regular community. So, what happens with these facilities is then you don't have middle aged and children around you anymore. It becomes just one generation staying together. And there are advantages to this mixing between generations as well. But having said that, as I said, it's really a personal choice, what your preferences are, whether aging at home is an option available to you. But my personal opinion has always been to prefer aging in place.
Right. Thank you. I think this issue about the exposure to other generations is fairly valid, and that itself can be very therapeutic.
It is.
We have a question from Mr. Dinesh Paliwal, and I'm sure this is something which you heard about. He says, I tend to get up at 3 a.m. and I'm not able to sleep again. He is 70.
Okay. But what time does Sir go to sleep?
Mr. Paliwal, could you tell us what time do you go to sleep? So we could ask.
We have you on the chat. What time do you go to sleep? And do you sleep at all during the day?
Right. So let me come to the next question then.
Yeah.
Until which is Mr. Suresh. So yeah, he sleeps at 10:30 p.m., which is not too early, and he will tell us whether he sleeps at all in the day. But as we get that okay, so he has no naps in the day. So once again, let me just repeat the question. So Mr. Dinesh Paliwal says he tends to get up at 3 a.m. and he's not able to sleep again. He is 70 and he sleeps every evening at 10:30 p.m. with no naps in the day.
Okay, so basically you're sleeping for about 4.5 hours. So I just have two very important questions to ask you. At the end of that, when you wake up at 3 in the morning, do you feel refreshed and do you feel good? Or do you feel, tired for the rest of the day and you're feeling sleep deprived? And secondly, is getting up at 3 in the morning distressing for you, or would you be able to get up and maybe read something or do something? Maybe you might fall asleep again, or maybe that's just the sleep requirement for your body. So I think what's really important is you need to, sleep deprived. Okay. So what we probably would need to do is we'd have to help you with some kind of sleep hygiene, and maybe you'd need some help with that. So as I said, I'm going to share our numbers with Mr. Maheshwari. So you could always connect with us through our geriatric OPD at Sukoon Nilaya. It's a free OPD, and we could probably just work out, because I don't know if it's safe for me to suggest any medications on this.
No, I think it's fine. But tell me, is this a medical condition, and should people who are sleep deprived and who feel sleep deprived, and because it's getting up in the middle of the night and they don't want to put on the lights because it's also going to disturb the rest of the family. They don't want to potter around in the kitchen, etc., because it's going to make some noise. So is this a medical condition that you think and that needs attention?
So I'll put it this way. It is something that needs attention, especially in the elderly, because what I'd be concerned about is if someone is getting up and it's still dark and they don't want to switch the lights on because they'll disturb everyone else, but they still get up and they potter around, my main concern would be the risk of falls for that person. Because honestly, the first thing that we need to prevent in the elderly is preventable falls. Because honestly, for the elderly, a fall is just the beginning of a downward decline. Because a fracture takes a long time to heal. The fall means restricted mobility. Restricted mobility puts people at risk for bed sores, puts them at risk for pneumonias. So we really want to prevent falls. So my concern if someone is having sleep issues is that they would then be at a risk for falls because they'll get up and start doing things. So does it need to be corrected? Yes. Do we need to correct and try to establish a good sleep-wake cycle where the person is feeling refreshed? Yes. But for that, we would probably need a more detailed history. Like we'd need to know, for example, what other medications are being taken. Are there any medications that should not be taken in the evenings because they may be stimulants? We might need to shift those to the daytime. So we want to look at things that need to be modified. We want to look at the consumption of caffeine. Is any tea or coffee being consumed after about, say, 5 or 6 in the evening? So there's a couple things that need to be checked and things that are reversible. And then it would be safe to opine on how to deal with this. But sleep disorders are part of what we call, I didn't want to go into too much theory, but we have something called the geriatric syndromes, which are the main issues that plague the geriatric population. So things like osteoporosis, insomnia, lack of appetite, malnutrition, frailty, risk of falls, fractures, bed sores, incontinence, dementia, delirium, depression. These are called the geriatric syndromes, and they pretty much capture what would trouble many of the elderly. So insomnia is one of them.
Doctor, my question to you is about specialists like yourself who are into geriatrics. Mm-hmm. Now, do you have enough number of them across the country, or is this an area that is the species of geriatric specialists still, very few and far between in various cities?
So at one time, it was probably a very new and maybe unheard of domain, but I do believe that I think AIIMS in Delhi now has an MD in geriatric medicine, and like AIIMS, there may be other institutes across India. So the good thing is that, like the fact that the government of Maharashtra has now formed a technical advisory committee for geriatric policy. And we are advising the government on how to roll out geriatric care to the district, block, and primary health care level, which I think is a good thing. So it is definitely gaining ground. I don't know how many geriatric people exist in India, but it's gaining ground.
And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to put you into a spot, but while committees might exist, is something definite happening in terms of actionable stuff?
Right. Yeah. In the last year, or in spite of the pandemic, yes, we've actually had online trainings through the Mumbai Palliative Care Network. So Dr. Raja Meyer, Dr. Roop Gursahani, who have been speakers on this platform, Dr. Sujit Rajan, all of them, they're all mentors to me. I see them all as my mentors. And all of us are part of the Mumbai Palliative Care Network. And we have done online trainings in palliative care, in which one of the modules is geriatric palliative care. That's the module that I do. And now in May, now that the pandemic has actually, the threat is a little less, we'll actually be having physical trainings with doctors across the state at the district and block level. So we're actually not looking at urban centers. We're actually looking right down to the primary health centers, the healthcare and wellness centers. They are very committed to starting palliative care and geriatric palliative care as part of that. So yes, it's moving forward.
Doctor, I must tell you that if there's anything that seniors today could be doing, given the fact that we are a leading platform for senior citizens, we'll be happy to help in any possible way. If nothing else, at least spread the message that is there. In our own small way, I must inform you, Doctor, we are trying our best to engage with senior citizens. For instance, we have this session, which is which happens without fail every Saturday. Then there is something called Seniors Have Talent that we do, where we engage 60 plusers in singing. And then through the week, we have various sessions. So there's somebody who's talking about physiotherapy, and there's somebody who's just talking about Kabir and short stories and poetry, etc. So we're trying our best to do that. But clearly, we would be happy to collaborate, and if not collaborate, at least take the message forward for any effort that would make our world a better place to live in. Doctor, I know we've reached 5:45, but there are a couple of questions that are there, which is from Sonali Mirchandani. She says, I find many elderly people forget to drink water or intentionally reduce their intake of water and don't realize they are getting dehydrated. Is this common?
Yes, it is very common. A lot of elderly people, one of the reasons why they reduce their intake of water is because they fear incontinence. So and incontinence is it's a very, I won't call it taboo, but it's very difficult to get a history of incontinence from a patient because it's seen as a social issue. So what we really need to do is, if we feel that the elderly, they may not drink water for I'll say 3 reasons. One, they may not realize the risk of dehydration. And even though it's very hot outside and they're sweating, they may not realize that they need to replenish the liquid. 2, they may be forgetful and they may have forgotten that they need to drink the water. And 3, they may be intentionally not drinking water because they fear issues of incontinence. So what we need to do is work on what the cause is. So if they just don't know, we just need to educate the elderly, and we need to give them, these days, everyone has some form of technology in the home, especially on this platform. We're obviously working with people who have access to technology. So maybe you can put reminders in your phone that every 1.5 hours, a little bell or something goes off and you take sips of water. This will, of course, be after checking with your physician if you have any contraindication to drinking excessive water. You would want to make sure that the elderly person, for example, doesn't have issues of glaucoma in the eyes, doesn't have any kind of congestive cardiac issue, doesn't have kidney issues. So, for example, should not be on any restricted fluid regime. If we know that they don't, and if they are on restricted fluids, we need to know how much fluid they're allowed to have. So if they're allowed, say, 1 liter in the day, then we need to space that 1 liter out and make sure that every 90 minutes to 2 hours, taking sips of water. The other thing is that you give them hydrating fruits and vegetables. So cucumber, lauki, watermelon, these are great ways to keep a person hydrated without putting a load of water into that person. Okay? So yes, dehydration is a big concern with the elderly. And yes, we need to think of ways to either set reminders for them or give them hydrating fruits and vegetables.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Leena Ganguly, for this session. There's another part of your specialization which we are going to come to you. Perhaps the Health Live forum is not, but about the intersection of health laws and what it means for senior citizens. So I'm going to come to you for that, and perhaps get an interaction with our readers. But thank you once again very much for this session. I must use this platform to thank Dr. Eric Borges for having alerted me about you, and that we should be able to invite you for this session. So thank you to him, and all the very best for all the great work that you're doing at Sukoon Nilaya and various other places, and for the entire lot of people who are doing great work in palliative care. So thank you once again very much. And to all of you here, we will be back once again with our Health Live at Seniors Today session next Saturday. And just one small information that our season 7 of Seniors Have Talent concludes next week, and there's a special day for that, which is Wednesday, April 13th. In fact, Seniors Have Challenge is now going to happen on Wednesday, the day, if you remember, Binaka Geet Mala used to be on air. So we are going to be occupying this position, this time slot. And we will be there. Seniors Have Challenge season 7, the season finale with 24 finalists is going to be on Zoom and on our various platforms on Wednesday, the 13th. And until we meet next time, once again, Dr. Leena Ganguly, thank you very much for being here. And to all of you, goodbye.
Thank you so much.
Subscribe now and press the bell icon. Never miss an update.